I started working on a story about a scandal in the ballet world.
I heard somebody screaming outside.
A Lakewood Ranch woman is behind bars tonight accused of killing her husband.
Ashley Benefield is a former ballerina. She's admitted shooting and killing her husband, Doug Benefield.
A loving father, a Navy veteran, and a gifted innovator.
Ashley Benefield claimed self-defense.
The 28-year-old claimed her husband was attacking her. Court records show a list of domestic-related cases going back 2 years.
Ashley claimed her husband had been poisoning her.
Doug's supporters say Ashley was a manipulative character straight out of Hollywood.
Well, Anne-Marie, we got twists, we got turns, and we got pirouettes.
Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel.
Today I want to talk about Ashley Benefield. She's currently awaiting trial. She's out on bond right now. I think she has a curfew and she has to wear an ankle bracelet, but she's free right now. She claims self-defense. The police disagree, and there's like evidence to support each theory, so it's a little bit confusing. So I want to do what I usually do on my channel, which is I want to give you guys the facts. We'll discuss the theories and then you can decide for yourself. I want to thank my subscribers. I really do believe I have the best subscribers. Like, honestly, you guys are like too nice to me. I don't want to jinx it, but you guys are so nice to me. So thank you. And thank you to Sundance Now for sponsoring this video. Sundance Now is an online streaming service that's ad-free. They have really interesting content, things like true crime, thrillers, documentary. With everyone having other streaming services and watching the same things, it's kind of hard to find new stuff to watch. They have hundreds of exclusive shows that you won't find anywhere else, and they're constantly coming out with new ones, like the weekly. The cost for Sundance is only $4.99 a month. You can watch it on your computer, but you can also watch it on other devices. They have it available for phones like iOS and Android. You can also watch it on Xbox One, Amazon Fire TV, Roku. And I have a show recommendation for you. It's called Hollington Drive. It's a true crime thriller kind of thing. Basically, it's about these two sisters. They have kids. They let the kids go and play, even though like one of the sisters is like, I don't know about this. But then one of them is missing. And so then it's kind of like, did the kids do something to the other kid? And now the mom is wondering, like, is her kid guilty? Because now they're acting different. Anyway, now is a perfect time to start streaming your new obsession, and you get your first 30 days free. Use my code. Go to sundancenow.com and use my code Noor, N-O-O-R. Thank you for sitting through that. And thank you to Sundance Now for sponsoring this video. Okay, so let's get into it. So the whole thing started on September 27th, 2020. It was a Sunday night, and all of a sudden, Ashley Benefield runs from her house with a gun in her hand to the neighbor's house. She runs, she knocks on the door, and she tells the neighbor, I just shot my husband in self-defense. Call 911.
It was right next door to me. She just came over. Her strange husband attacked her, and she says she shot him.
So police and EMT arrive, and the EMT immediately begin trying to help Doug. That's who she shot, her husband Doug. And they notice that he's got like 2 bullet wounds in his right leg and in his arm. They notice that one of the bullets went from his arm to his chest cavity. There's stuff in the floor. So it seems like there's been several shots that have been fired. And so they try to resuscitate him. He's alive at this time, but he can't speak. So they end up taking him to the hospital, and unfortunately, he dies an hour later. So the only person who can tell us what happened is Ashley. And Ashley wasn't really talking. All she said was that she still had ringing in her ears. She said that she did it in self-defense, and that was it. All we know is what we hear from her mother and her attorney. Quote, but Ashley's mother, Alicia, told the detective that she and her daughter were victims of DA. Sorry, I have to censor that. DV is another word for it. So she claimed that they had tried to get help, but nobody would help them. Ashley's lawyer, Faith Brown, told the detective that Ashley was actually creating an escape plan to get away from Doug once and for all. She told the detective, quote, Ashley was in danger, has a psychologist, 2 attorneys, and a burner phone. How Lori Vallow of you. Ashley also had a safe location and a rental car set up. And she was expected to implement the plan the very next day, but she was very concerned that Doug was, quote, getting wind of the plan. The officers, they took that into account, but they were looking at the evidence. And from the evidence, they saw no signs of a struggle. They said that Ashley had an old, healed pretty much scratch on her arm. The evidence showed that Doug's back was actually towards her and that he had no signs of defensive wounds. She didn't have signs of defensive wounds. So it didn't seem like there was some sort of altercation that happened leading up to the shooting. At first, they don't arrest Ashley because she's claiming self-defense and everything like that. But then as they continue with their investigation and the evidence I just told you, they decide, no, this was not self-defense. And so they have a warrant out for her arrest. They tell her attorney, and then she turns herself in. How did Ashley end up here? Everybody who knew Ashley said that she was always so poised, so in control. You see, Ashley was training her whole entire life to be a ballerina. Since she was 8 years old, she was so dedicated to be a ballerina that she actually dropped out of high school to focus on this career. But by the time she was 21, her career had pretty much, it was over. The thing is, this industry, like the ballerina world, it's extremely oversaturated. There are very few positions that are full-time jobs that you can actually make a living off of. And unfortunately for Ashley, she didn't make the cut. As much as Ashley wanted to be a ballerina, she wanted something else more. In a journal entry from 2014, she wrote, quote, "I know what I want more than anything. I want to love and be loved. I want to be a wife and a mother. Please bring me that special man you have chosen for me," she prayed. She kind of decides to pivot. She does some modeling gigs, and then she gets into politics. She would meet her husband, Doug, the one that she shot. Yeah, she met him. But before she met him, you know who she met? Donald Trump, of all people. It was at a campaign event in late 2015 when she met Donald Trump. And again, according to that journal that she kept, quote, "He said I looked good in his plane. He called me a bombshell. He called me his little girl and his baby. And he said he wanted a big fat kiss and promised her a job at the White House." And that's how she ends up at a party, a fundraiser, at Ben Carson's house. Do you guys remember Ben Carson? He had run for president and he was having a fundraiser for the Republican National Committee at his house. And it was at this fundraiser that Ashley met Doug. So who is Doug? Well, depends who you ask. Most people see Doug as a devoted father. He was a Navy veteran. He would donate small donations, but he was a pretty frequent donor to the Republican National Party. That's why they invited him to the thing. He had turned himself from a veteran to a successful entrepreneur. At least that's what people thought. There is someone who had a very bad experience with Doug when it comes to his entrepreneurial spirit. This person is a professor, a law professor called William Want. And William is actually too embarrassed to say how much money he invested with Doug because he feels like he got scammed. So he doesn't even want to say for how much because he's embarrassed. And this is what he said, quote, "Doug would talk to funders claiming he had funds, but he didn't. He and a couple others involved in the venture had just spent wildly, enjoying themselves on investor money. Want eventually sued Doug. I knew I wouldn't get any money," he said, "but I was just pissed off enough that I wanted to do it for humankind, to put this suit out there to warn other people." And so Doug and Ashley meet, and according to everybody who knows them, it was love at first sight. And they went hard, fast, heavy, quick. Ashley's 24 and Doug is 54 when they meet. So there's a 30-year age difference between them. But despite that age gap, they actually had a lot in common. First of all, they both had the same political ideology. Second of all, they both loved guns. As a matter of fact, Ashley had a gun in her bra the whole night. And there's a text message. "Loved the time with you, Ashley Oakley," he wrote. And If you don't know Annie Oakley, she's like a famous, back in the day, she's like a sharpshooter, a famous female shooter who was really good with guns. So, you know, he was calling her Ashley Oakley, you know, a play on Annie Oakley. So, whatever. So that was like the beginning of their relationship. And immediately, I'm talking, they moved fast. So they meet August 25th. Less than a week after they meet, they're already texting each other, I love you. A week after that, so 2 weeks after they meet, they got married. Huh. Woo! The wedding was pretty private. Nobody was there except for a witness and Trip Cormany, who is Doug's friend, and he also officiated the wedding, and things start moving even faster. And they decide to start a ballet company together, but not just any ballet company. They're going to do something revolutionary. Their ballet company is going to accept people of all shapes and sizes. If you're too tall, if you're too short, if you're too curvy, it doesn't matter. They're also going to be diverse. They've got a lot going on at this time. They just got married. They're starting a new business together. Ashley now wants to get pregnant. By the way, Doug already has a daughter, a teenage daughter, and her and Ashley aren't getting along.
I felt like Ashley was taking my dad away from me.
Doug's daughter is 15 years old. Her name is Eva, and she had a hard time adjusting because she had just been through a crazy situation. Her mom had recently passed away like 9 months ago, not even a year ago. You know how her mom died? It was ruled a natural death. She's had some sort of heart attack, the coroner said, and it was a previously undiagnosed heart condition. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, so they're having this tension between them, and a month after Ashley and Doug get married, Ashley calls Trip Cormany. Remember him? He's the one who officiated their wedding. She calls Trip hysterical. Quote, "She was just hysterical," Cormany said. "I just said, Ashley, what is the bottom line here? What are you so upset about?" And she said, "I just want him to pick me." Remember the whole diary thing? I was telling you how she was writing in a diary. Well, by 2017, she and Doug have this journal together that they fill in. It's a Q&A a day journal, and they wrote on it the notes of Doug and Ashley 2017 to 2021. And I'll read you some quotes. It says, "Both responded to prompts like, if you could go back in time and change something, what would it be?" Doug said, "Be with Ashley, whole life." Ashley said, "I love him!" Exclamation point. Another question said, "What is your mission?" Ashley responds, "Make a happy home for my family." And then she drew a heart. Doug responds, "Become Christ-like." Another question. This was in April 2017. "Who do you feel closest to?" Doug says, "Ashley, she is a part of me." Ashley says, "Doug, I never want to be without him." And then something major happens. Ashley discovers that Eva, Doug's daughter, has a diary, and she decides to read her diary. And in that diary, Eva basically says that she hates Ashley. So Ashley is upset. She goes to Doug. She confronts him. They get into this huge fight, and something insane happens during the fight.
An incident where during an argument, he shot a gun into the ceiling.
Quote, "I was just in utter disbelief. Everything going on in our life, a lot of stress," he later said. The fight resumed. In the heat of one argument, he punched a hole in the wall. Another time, Doug picked up a gun and fired it into the ceiling. That same day, he struck the family dog in the face. He later confessed in a written statement, "Sully starts to jump up from under the table, and I sadly just hit him." Don't fuck with the dogs now. As if things can't get more bizarre, a few days after this insane incident where Doug had fired into the ceiling and hit the dog and all this crazy stuff, just a few days later, Doug and Ashley host a wedding reception for themselves. And in this picture of them at that reception, I can't help but notice Doug's crazy eyes. In the Vanity Fair article, the journalist asks Ashley, like, how are you smiling like this in the photo after this crazy thing just happened a few days later? And Ashley says, I'm a ballet dancer. I can look happy no matter what's going on in my life. I put on one hell of a show. And let me tell you, it's about to be a hell of a show, a shit show actually. Ashley wants to have a child with Doug. The thing is, Doug had a vasectomy. So she starts pressuring him to reverse his vasectomy so that they can have a kid. And he does, and they do. Ashley is now pregnant, and we're about to hit the breaking point. There's all this tension between her and Eva, and they're trying to start this ballet company. And now it is getting to the point where the dancers they hired are about to start showing up, and they're not ready for them. First of all, Doug is having issues with money. Remember the guy who said he scammed them? Yeah, so these kind of issues are creeping up again, where it seems like he doesn't have the funding he claimed he had, and the money that was allocated for the ballet company is somehow not there. And then on top of that, Ashley is having really, really bad nausea. Not typical pregnancy nausea, but like debilitating nausea. She can't walk, she feels dizzy, and she can't really help with the business. There are some texts from August 16, 2017 between Doug and Ashley where Ashley is talking about how bad she feels. Quote, baby, I feel so effing horrible, she texted him. Baby, I literally can't move. I feel so sick. Ashley's mom lives in Florida, and this ballet company and her whole life with Doug is in Charleston, South Carolina. So they decide to let Ashley go back to Florida and stay with her mom during the pregnancy so that her mom can help her and she can be over there. Meanwhile, Doug is supposed to stay in Charleston and work on the ballet company. Well, she starts to suspect that this is something much more than just pregnancy nausea. So she takes a lock of her hair and she sends it to a lab to test. And the lab comes back and says that essentially she's being poisoned. Ashley says, I got my results back and was blown away. The lab said it had detected dangerous levels of aluminum, cobalt, zinc, tin, and barium in her body. Their explanation was shocking. Ashley had been deliberately and systematically exposed to these toxins by an individual who may be identified as the poisoner, according to the lab. Ashley then remembers that every single morning, Doug would make her a hot sweet tea. And she starts saying, oh my God, was he poisoning me with that tea? Then she starts remembering how his wife, Renee, Eva's mother, how she died 9 months before they met. Remember how I told you there's a conspiracy with that? Yeah, that conspiracy is that Doug was poisoning her because she complained about not feeling well before this. She had fainted a few times. And then when she passed and police started looking into it, they found that things were not going well between Doug and Renee. Quote, when police in Mount Pleasant investigated Renee's death and searched her cell phone, they learned that she and Doug had been fighting. The decedent stated to her husband how he kicked her over New Year's Eve during their honeymoon. They summarized in an investigation report and also described Mr. Benefield putting a gun to his head in the past. In the year before her death, Renee had been sick. Her husband told detectives that she had fainted twice in the past year, and the coroner concluded that she had died of a heart condition. So at this point, Ashley's convinced Doug poisoned Renee. That's why she died. And now Doug is poisoning her. So now Ashley starts texting Doug about Renee and what happened to Renee. And, she's like suspicious now. So she texts Doug. She goes, wait, what did she die of again? And Doug goes, Renee had a 75% artery blockage. Ashley says, I thought I've heard you say something about medications or something, like bad drugs. But Doug's like, no, and he's not really suspecting that she thinks he poisoned her at this point. He has no idea. So let's talk real quick about the lab that did the testing, because this lab is quite controversial. Remember Brittany Murphy, the actress that died, and then there was this weird thing where it was like, was she poisoned? Was there some sort of toxic thing? Did she have pneumonia? Then her husband died, and then they were like, was there something in the house? Were they being poisoned? Well, Brittany Murphy's family had taken her DNA or hair or whatever and sent it to this very lab that Ashley sent her hair to. And this lab is called the Carlson Company. And it's controversial. Why? Because when the Brittany Murphy thing happened and her stuff was tested and this lab came out and said she was being poisoned by heavy metals and stuff. Basically, she was given rat poison. Then there was a expert toxicology guy who came out and was like, this is ridiculous. And they debunked this company's claims. Then there's also a case that happened. It was a crime case, and during the trial, they had used the services of this company, the Carlson Company, and they end up finding out, long story short, that there was an error. They said that this person had 7 times the amount of GHB in their system, but then come to find out that wasn't accurate, and it was like a mistrial, and basically they were not accurate in their testing. And now you have Ashley going to that same company claiming that she's being poisoned. So I don't know, is she or isn't she? Those are the facts with the whole poisoning thing. You tell me if you think she was or wasn't being poisoned. While Ashley is in Florida and Doug is in Charleston, in the beginning, it seems like things are fine. They're sending each other lovey-dovey text messages. Everything seems cool until September 18th, the day the business was supposed to launch. And Ashley decides to secretly drive 500 miles from Florida to Charleston, South Carolina, with this debilitating nausea and sickness and her pregnancy and all that. She drives by herself. She secretly goes into the home that they were in together. He's at the studio still. And she basically writes him a Dear John letter, right? A breakup letter. In this letter, she says some interesting things. I can honestly tell you that I am completely heartbroken, her letter began. Over the next 4 pages, she set forth 21 bullet-pointed complaints covering his behavior. You yell and scream and cuss at me. You have thrown and broken things, even a loaded gun which left a giant hole in the wall. Then she talked about the condition of the house, that it had black mold on the walls, unsafe tap water, exposed outlets. Then she also says, do not harass or try to follow me, or I will call the police and have a restraining order against you. Do not call me or my mom. We will not pick up. She leaves that letter. She takes some of her things that are left over there and she goes back to Florida. Doug comes back home. He sees the letter and he texts her. He says, quote, I just read the note. I don't even know how to start responding. I am sorry I wasn't a stronger, better man through everything. I will never act the way you talk about again. Ashley ignores him, but that doesn't stop him. He's sending her messages all the time, unprompted. Like, she's not responding. She told him it's over, but he's constantly being like, I'm sorry. Like, he'll send her messages such as, I will never raise my voice to you. Then he says he's going to therapy. He's going to lock up the guns. He goes, thank you, amazing woman of God, for being you. Then he sends another message. I am constantly sending angels to guard and protect you and our baby. The only time Ashley responds is when it has to do with the ballet business or to ask him for money or something like that. But she's never engaging with the lovey-dovey stuff. Doug keeps going, sending her messages like, we are perfect together. And then a few days later, I just have never loved this deep before. I lost it. I admit it and know it. Doug's relationship is unraveling right now. And so is the business, because now it's time for the payroll and he has no money. So he's like borrowing money and paying them cash under the table, not like officially paying them from the business. So the dancers are starting to be like, what is going on? This is really weird. So now it's mid-October. It's been like a month of him begging for Ashley back and she's ignoring him. Ashley was, quote, forced out of the company. She calls Doug screaming, what? You took my ballet company from me, blah, 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 blah. And he's basically like, listen, you're not here. You're not helping. Like, we need leadership. You're not leading, you know, and they have this huge issue. A few days after that, on October 20th, they call the dancers in and try to get them to sign these NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. 3 days after the dancers signed the non-disclosure agreements, they fire half the dancers. Now that there's that NDA, they can't really say what happened. So it seems like the NDA thing was a ruse to get them to sign so that when they fire them, they can't really say what happened. My conspiracy, allegedly, don't sue me. That very day, Ashley goes on the Facebook page and the Instagram of American National Ballet, and she makes a post where she publicly disavows the company. A note from the founder of American National Ballet. I want to start by saying that I publicly disavow my support for American National Ballet and its leadership. I have been on personal leave and out of state since the end of August and heard secondhand about the devastation that took place on October 23rd. As the founder, I am completely devastated by what has been done and the way it was done. The new leadership has destroyed all that we worked so hard to build, and I cannot stand behind them or their actions. A&B was created to be different from any other company and was supposed to set a new standard in how it treated its dancers. Everyone involved should be ashamed of themselves and how this was handled. For how this was handled. My heart goes out to all those affected by recent changes. Each and every dancer brought on possesses amazing talent and potential. The original group assembled was truly diverse in every way, and this is a huge loss for America and for art lovers around the world. As I am no longer associated with this organization in any way, please feel free to share your concerns with A&B's leadership. Company COO Beth Bogush, and then her email, sincerely, Ashley Benefield. Doug freaks out and he starts begging her to take down the post. He tells her, quote, "You are hurting the dancers who are staying." She responds, "What about all the people whose lives were just ruined?" He responds, "There's no money. You have no idea how bad I want out of this and only desire to cover the 40 dancers hired." Ashley says, "This is what everybody hates about the ballet world. It is what we were supposed to fight against." So Doug has no idea that Ashley thinks he's poisoning her. Her birthday rolls around. This is around November 2017. So he sends her a gift, a birthday gift. And what do you think that gift is? It is a tea set with beautiful cups and teapot and some tea. So Ashley is convinced. She gets this teapot. She already thinks that he's been poisoning her with the tea. And she's like, "Oh my God, this is poison." So she takes it to the police and tells them, like, "This is poison. He's poisoning me. You guys need to test it." The police are like, "This is hazmat. Oh my God, all this and all that." And they say that there's nothing in the tea. So now it's the spring of 2018 and Ashley is due to give birth. She decides she's going to give birth in secret. She doesn't tell anyone. She has the baby in Florida. She doesn't list anyone as the father, and she doesn't give the baby the Benefield last name. So Doug has no idea that she's given birth at this point. And by the way, they test the baby and the baby's healthy because Ashley was convinced that he was poisoning her and it was going to the baby. And so ipso facto, he's poisoning the baby. But there wasn't anything in the baby system, but that still didn't stop Ashley from going and doing these really intense treatments to detox the baby.
The baby's blood work showed she was healthy, but Ashley still took the baby for treatment in this hyperbaric chamber to detox poisons.
Quote, "In June, apparently concerned that her daughter could have been poisoned in utero, Ashley sought out the hyperbaric centers of Southwest Florida and signed up her 3-month-old daughter for 26 sessions in an oxygen chamber. A court battle begins between Doug and Ashley. Doug finds out that she had the baby and didn't tell him and is like keeping the baby from him. So he is filing for custody of a baby that he hasn't even met yet. Ashley is now saying, "Actually, no, you are poisoning me and I want a restraining order." So during their court battle, you start to see that actually Ashley has called and reported and made many cases. She claims he's doing stuff to her and poisoning her and hurting her and blah, 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 blah. But each case is closed. Nothing really comes from it. They don't really find the evidence. And the judge ends up siding with Doug. The judge says, quote, "There is not a single scintilla of credible evidence that Ms. Benefield has ever been poisoned or suffered from any illness of any poison." Remember how I said this case is bizarre? Here's another example why. During all this, poisoning accusations, business crumbling, fights with his daughter, What do you think happens? They decide to get back together.
The couple was in a custody battle over their 2.5-year-old daughter. They were separated. The victim's family tells me despite all their differences, they were all planning on moving to Maryland the very next day.
Every time she made allegations, she always came back to him and gave him hope of reconciling.
Ashley said that she wanted to move to Maryland together and start over as a family.
It seems like Ashley has ulterior motives. It seems like she does not trust Doug, even though they're patching things up and going to these ballet events together and all this and all that. She and her mother end up pulling Eva aside one day at some kind of event and basically telling her, like, your dad killed your mom. Like, has he done anything to you? Like, be careful. Like, he's out to get you. He's out to get us. And Eva's like, stop. No, I don't believe you. Like, stop. And then Doug ends up hiring a private investigator because he is suspicious that she's seeing someone else. He would call Ashley sometimes, she would be unreachable, and things were different. And so he's like, she's doing something. He hires a PI, he gets a tracker on her car, like all this crazy stuff. And the PI essentially tells him, she's cheating on you. So Doug is really angry at first, but then he's like, no, I forgive you. I want to work on this family. I love you. And so they decide to go to marriage counseling and work on their marriage. And then the marriage counselor found out that Doug was secretly recording the therapy sessions. And so she's like, we're not going to do this anymore. She continues dealing with Ashley, but she's like, I don't want to deal with you. You're recording our sessions, to Doug. And now Doug is upset and doesn't want to be with Ashley anymore. This is the end of 2019. And then, as we know, 2020 rolls around, and then we have the pandemic, le fric se chic, and everything is on lockdown. And 2 months into lockdown, in May of 2020, Ashley reaches out to Doug. I don't know if she was lonely or whatever, but she reaches out to him, and she's like, I just want to talk. We should talk. And Doug comes right back, and he sends his lawyer an email because he was in the process of getting divorced. And he tells the lawyer, quote, she's looking to go to a real trauma therapist together. Very conciliatory and own her mistakes. The lawyer, she warned Doug. She tried. She goes, it has long been my belief, sorry, I know you don't want to hear this, that Ashley could be using this opportunity to forum shop, looking for a new jurisdiction and new judge to whom she can restart the story/case since she has not had any luck. I have the same concern, Doug admitted. I do not trust her at all, no matter how much hope for her change. Less than a month from this email, Ashley's going to shoot Doug. It all comes to a head on Sunday night, September 27, 2020.
They were packing up her house in Florida.
I heard somebody screaming outside.
They were at Ashley's mom's house in Florida. He comes in a U-Haul. They're going to pack up and leave and go to Maryland and start fresh. Except that's not what happens. While they're in the process of them moving, Ashley's mom decides to take the little baby, Doug and Ashley's kid, for a walk. So now it's only Ashley and Doug in the house alone, and Ashley ends up shooting Doug. We don't know exactly what happened. We just know that there was some screaming, enough for a 911 call.
I heard somebody screaming outside.
And now Ashley is in jail for about 2 weeks. She posts bond. She's out. She's still out to this day. So those are the facts. Now let's discuss the theories. So essentially, there really are two theories, right? It's either self-defense or a setup. The self-defense theory, let's talk about that first. There are some things that support this theory, namely Doug's past, the incident where he shot the gun, the incident where he hit the dog, the text messages between him and his wife where she talks about him kicking her on the honeymoon, him not denying any of this when she wrote him the note and him saying, I'll do better, you're right, I felt bad. He admitted to hitting the dog. So he does do these things. He does seem remorseful. Again, that's a very big pattern with, you know, that kind of thing where they like hurt you and then they like beg forgiveness, sell you the world, I'll do everything, give you gifts. It's like the whole grooming process. So is it impossible that Doug was doing something harmful to Ashley throughout the relationship? No. Doesn't mean this happened that night. I don't know. Just because his back was turned in that moment doesn't mean there wasn't something going on before then, and then his back was turned and she saw an opportunity. Which brings me to my next point, which is her use of guns, right? She had the gun in her bra. She always had a gun with her. As a matter of fact, one of Doug's friends said that the first time he met her, there was this bizarre exchange between them. Quote, Schiffman, the computer scientist who shared office space with Doug, said Ashley seemed immature. The first time she visited Charleston, Doug took her by the office and introduced them. I said something to the effect of, "You've got Doug here to show you around and take care of you while you're here." Ashley responded, "I can take care of myself." And, to Schiffman's alarm, pulled a gun out of her jean shorts. It was very bizarre, he said. She did it in sort of a giggling manner. I didn't feel threatened, but it's a very socially awkward thing to do when you first meet someone. Then you also have the story that her lawyer and mother told the night of the shooting about how she had this escape plan and things were really bad and she was going to get away, but he caught wind of the plan and so she had to do what she had to do. Kind of like that J-Lo movie, Enough kind of thing, kind of, sort of.
This is what you wanted, right?
You want to fight me? No, I'm sorry. I can't do this. You're not gonna murder me.
Self-defense is not murder.
It's not self-defense when you break in here and attack me. You really think you're gonna kill me and get away with it?
I told you. Self-defense.
There are other things that support a setup theory. Doug's cousin, Tommy Benefield, said, quote, "She found him at his most vulnerable. He was her mark. She took his money, his peace, and eventually she took his life, and he loved her until the end." Now, according to police, there's more than just the physical evidence of her not having any marks and him not having any marks and he wasn't even facing her. There's more than that. They believe that her history of filing these complaints against him when she found out she's pregnant, and they think that the whole thing was a custody battle so that she could have custody of the kid alone and he would have to pay. And that when she decided to shoot him, it was when she had no recourse with the custody because the judge had sided with him. And then all of a sudden she was being really nice, and that this was all a plan so that she could get rid of him, keep the kid, and potentially any money he may have. But the weird part for me is that he had told her already there is no money. He couldn't even pay the ballet dancers. He was struggling with the money. He was letting them go. So what money is she going to get from him? Unless this was more like she's upset and she's going to get back at him, or maybe she really did think he was poisoning her and so she was going to get back at him for that. I'm not sure what the motive is, but clearly both of them are a little bit off. The only person who knows what really happened was Ashley. And so we'll have to wait for the trial. I am planning, it's a while from now, but I'm planning to keep up with that when that does happen. So I would love to know what you guys think. Do you think this is self-defense, or do you think this was a total setup? Me, personally, I think from the evidence, I think he was caught unaware. I don't know if they had a fight or there was some threats made or something beforehand, but it doesn't seem like she was in immediate physical harm. If there were no other weapons around but her gun, he had locked up all the guns. So she was the only one there. So it wasn't like he was threatening her with the gun. She had no physical marks on her body. So bottom line is, I don't believe her 100%. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you to Sundance Now for sponsoring this video. Check the link in the description. Use my code Noor. And that's it. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.